Hey guys, for this video I'm going to show how I drew a one-point perspective hallway. I also incorporated some elements of breaking down over time, how things have a tendency to erode, often seen in video games. I went around my town and took some pictures and did some research on how things naturally crack and break, especially construction materials such as concrete, brick, and some other building materials. I started out locating the center of my paper. The pencil here is lying right in the middle of the paper. And just to the left side of that, I'm going to create a box that's 4 inches on each side. I'm zooming in here to show where my vanishing point is going to be. It's going to be just left of center in the middle. This is going to align us to the left side of the hallway. I'm labeling it VP, and I'm connecting that vanishing point to the corner of the box that I've created, not to the corner of my paper, but to the corner of that box. And I'm drawing it out for the corners. Now I'm going to establish the first row of my tiles. I am drawing a mark 1 inch up from the bottom of my paper. This will be the first row. I'm going to draw a line connecting that 1 inch thick row. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to create the columns. I'm measuring out the columns. They are 2 inches each. Sometimes it doesn't align all the way to the end. That's okay. Now I'm going to align those marks with my vanishing point and draw them through. This creates the columns of the tiles. So now I'm going to establish the rows receding back into the distance. I'm going to use a diagonal right here between the first tile so you can see where I'm identifying the corners going through the tile diagonally. I'm going to align my ruler to the diagonal, and where that ruler goes through each point into the distance, each column edge, I'm going to make a mark. And that identifies where each row is going to go. I'm careful to make sure that my lines are completely horizontal with the edge of my paper. It's sometimes hard to do that. In fact, you'll see when I get to the end, it might be just a little off, but that's okay. I'm going to create a little hallway taking a left turn here because I don't want this to be a dead end. I want to be able to turn the corner and go down a new hallway. Every vertical line in 1 and 2 point perspective will stay straight up and down with the edge of my paper. Most lines in this plane going horizontally will go to my vanishing point. These lines I'm creating now won't actually. I'm now drawing in a light. I am not sure what I want to do with this, if I want to actually make a light or a skylight. I'm going to make this a long light. Again, the edges go to my vanishing point. Now I'm identifying the size of the bricks that I want to use. These are actually cinder blocks, so they're going to be a little bit bigger. I'm using a 1/2 inch here. I'm aligning all of these points to my vanishing point, and I'll draw them through. This will create the rows in my cinder blocks. I found some images of how bricks and blocks are stacked. So I'm referencing those and understanding that I've got to stagger them. Every other block will be staggered. Here I'm beginning to fracture the wall. I'm going to take this piece of the wall out. So I'm referencing how those cracks look in concrete and in cinder block. They follow a contour. Now I'm identifying the thickness of the wall. I will later go back and make this a little bit wider and erasing my extra lines. Where these lines are being erased is where I will imagine what could be out there, what could be on the other side of that wall. These are some textural elements I'm adding. As a wall breaks, it's going to have some interesting textures. On the far wall, I have a lot of options here. I've decided on this one, I've chosen to create a doorway. So a set of double doors with windows to see into the outside world. Now I'm beginning to shade. Referencing how shadows align on walls, I'm also using a light mortar in between. I like the look of it. I'm putting some subtle variations in the values of each brick. I think it makes it interesting. It breaks up the pattern. And it's what I see in real life. I'm going to break up the floor now using contouring, just like a river runs and meanders. I'm actually creating a cliff-like edge. So it almost looks like somebody took a bite out of a cookie and it's crumbling. When I shade these elements, I think where the light is and where the light isn't. If it's tucked in tight, there's going to be less light. I also like to erase a little bit between the values on the edge. It just gives it a little bit of an accent. Helps define those edges. I'm shading in a little bit of the broken wall here where it's turning away from the light. It's turning downward, so I'm shading those downward parts and leaving the tops light, erasing a little bit of that highlight on top, defining that brokenness. Now I'm moving into the landscape. I begin by just shading in the entire portion here. I'm going to be using some eraser techniques. I'm blending to get rid of that texture. Now I'm defining the mountains. Things look good in threes, so I like to think about that anytime I'm doing anything natural. I am aware of my horizon line here. It is actually where my vanishing point is. The dock is drawn to my vanishing point. This is kind of where I imagine I would like to be if I wasn't here now. Here I'm erasing the top of clouds. They're light, fluffy. The bottom's a little flatter, a little darker. I'll go in and shade some of those darks just to give it a little bit more dimension. Now I'm realizing that my mountains are very flat. I'm going to try to draw out some contour lines to make them look a little more dimensional, as if they're coming out at me. I am aware of my light source, where the sun's coming from, and I'm shading according to that. Where the mountains begin to turn away from the light, they're going to be darker. Where they're more facing the light, they're going to be lighter. Now I go back in with an eraser and I'm erasing those details where the light might be catching the cliffside. Definitely the tops of the mountains. I'm going to address the shoreline now. I'd like to put some elements here, trees. I'm being very ambiguous with my details because it's so far away. So I'm drawing these trees very fast, very irregular. I'm making sure that I'm not picket fencing the trees. I don't want to make them all the same height or the same space apart. Here I'm eraser drawing some water accents, so the way the wind will carry the water. I'm careful to make it very lateral. In landscaping, everything is foreshortened. I'm putting in some reflection, some detail in the waves. I'm now addressing the ceiling. I want to shade it just a little bit to show the light. I decided to put a skylight in, so I've got to create the shadow to make the illusion of light. Here I'm erasing some highlights where the skylight's actually picking up on the brick wall. And so I'm erasing some details as the light will wash out some of those. It'll either lighten them or wash them out completely. Gives the illusion of light shining on a surface. And through the window, I can see some more trees on the far off distance across the lake, so I'm going to go ahead and put those in for a little added element. There's really no limit to what you can do. You're not limited by creativity. Think about what could be outside. Think about what the cracks could look like inside. Holes in the wall, contouring cracks. I encourage you to use your imagination, use your creativity. Imagine a place you would like to be, or just something you would really like to draw. Use color. It's okay to get creative with these elements. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.